Sup nerds, Paul Conti here. Sorry. Ooh.
I guess before anything else, I looked through the Discord chat, and I guess I have a question. Is the Marathi list that you mentioned
Yeah,
in Discord chat gonna make an appearance? Okay,
it is, yes.
all right.
And it's as good a place to start as any, because it has to do with command abilities.
All right, all right.
Supposedly, there are no rules of one in the GHB 18, and so we can use as many command abilities a turn as we want. That's probably not okay. Let's talk lists. So these aren't the most competitive lists, they're just made to illustrate how bullshit this can be. So we take Marathi, of course. A Hag Queen for 60 points. We give her the Aether Quartz Brooch, which is the kind of artifact that is always a bad choice, unless you're doing something super broken, and we are. Each time you spend a command point, roll a dice, and on a 5-up, you receive a command point. 2 units of 10 Melisai Bloodstalkers, the ones with the bows, 10 Witches, and 10 Sisters of Slaughter. The use for those, besides rotting us out to exactly 2,000 points, will become apparent later, and 500 points of command points. Marathi High Oracle of Khaine. She has the command ability Worship Through Bloodshed. If she's your general, you can use this ability. If you do, pick up the 2 friendly Daughters of Khaine units within 14 inches of her, and you can't target her, so we target the 2 units of Bloodstalkers. These units can immediately shoot, as if it were the shooting phase. Great. So we have 20 of them. So we'll shoot 20 times, spend a command point, shoot 20 times, spend a command point, shoot 20 times, etc. So you consider Aether Quartz Brooch is a 5-up, so about 33%, so we'll say out of 10 we get an extra 3 command points. It's like 70 to 80 damage on average. Obviously you're not using them all at once, you're going one at a time, so you don't have to overspend. And you can probably, the trick is getting within 24 inches, but as soon as you do, whatever it is dead no matter what. Very fun and interactive. If you blow up most of their army and then they kill the snakes, well, it's still kind of okay, because the main thing is to keep your Sisters of Slaughter alive, so that they can pile in 6 inches past your destroyed witches, who were bubble wrapping for them, and then start piling in over and over with the Sisters of Slaughter in the hero phase. If your opponent still has some guys left, you can always transform Marathi into a monster that can't die for 4 turns, so it's pretty good. It's not bleeding edge competitive, it's just completely bullshit. List 2. Here we have Grand Host of Nagash. We're playing Nagash, and we're playing Archon the Black. Then we have 40 skeletons, 2 units of Dire Wolves, and just for fun, Purple Sun and Soul Snare Shackles. Oh, and 350 points of command points, of course. So we have 7. Nagash's spells are Prison of Grief, the one that causes them not to be able to move on a 5-up. Spectral Grasp, which halves their movement, and Soul Harvest, which does damage and heals him. Archon the Black knows Fading Vigor, so that you only roll 1 dice when charging. So Prison of Grief, Spectral Grasp, Fading Vigor, Soul Snare Shackles, these are all meant to just keep the opponent back a little bit, so that you can use Archon the Black's command ability. So Archon the Black does not need to be your general to use his ability. What it does is all friendly death wizards within 18 inches of him can increase the range of their spells by 6 inches. So use this 3 or 4 times, and now Nagash is Hand of Dusting people from across the entire board. Archon the Black's using Curse of Years from across the whole board. You're throwing a Purple Sun, like 30 inches away. It's a real problem. And Nagash gets to cast all 8 of his spells, Archon gets to cast 3 of his. This one's a little different than the Marathi list, in that, like, it's a playable thing if your combo doesn't work out quite so well. And you have 40 skeletons, after all, who are immune to Battle Shock. If your opponent has a bunch of Unbinders, just set up 31 inches away from them, and you'll have to spend an extra command point, but you're still good. Absolutely, positively no fun to play against. Alright, third bullshit list. This one, it doesn't matter what faction you are. Although the ones with tons of wizards, of course, are the best for this. So, we'll say Tzeentch. Chosen totally at random, we'll say Tzeentch. The spell we're abusing, of course, is Umbral Spell Portal, because nothing about this War Scroll is even remotely fair. It has the illusion of being fair, because your opponent can send stuff back through it if he has a wizard within 1 inch of it. But let's get real. That's just... You set it up 2 inches away from their wizard, they can't even use it next turn. Like, it's going to take them a long time to use your own spell portal against you. It's really not as dangerous for you as you think. Now there's a bunch of bullshit you can do with the spell portal, you know? Like, oh, now you're, Hand of Dusting from really far away, or you're getting a Nurgle guy on a Balewind Vortex so that in a 9-inch radius around the end of the door, a unit is taking 1 mortal wound per model in the unit, like, those are level 1, they're good, they're annoying, they're no fun. There's also opening the door and then casting 11 spells through it, which is just, of course, completely unfair and no fun to play against, total bullshit, but not bullshit enough. I want more. I think we can do better, and we can do better with the worst endless spell, Suffocating Gravetide. Summon Suffocating Gravetide as casting value of 6. If successfully cast, set up a Suffocating Gravetide wholly within 4 inches of the caster. This is actually kind of hard because it has a big long base, so it's got to be pretty close to the caster. Your caster in this scenario will be 1 inch away from a spell portal because, of course, spell portal is bullshit. It's predatory. It can move up to 8 inches and can fly. And so let's define some terms here. Abilities. Necrotic Tide. When this model is set up, the player who set it up can immediately make a move with it. Okay? So we set it up, and we immediately make a move. The move is 1 millimeter. Right? Alright, we've finished our move. Umbral Spell Portal. If a predatory endless spell finishes a move within 6 inches of an Umbral Spell Portal model, remove it from the battlefield and set it up again anywhere within 6 inches of the other Umbral Spell Portal model from this endless spell. Okay. So we'll set it up on the other side. And the model's set up, right? So now we get to move it. 8 inches. You kind of move it forward just so it's about 1 millimeter over whatever's on the other side of the gate, and then move it back, and they'll take a D3 mortal wounds. Pretty good. Well, you just finished a move. And you just finished a move near an Umbral Spell Portal. So you get to remove it from the battlefield and set it up on the other end of the spell portal. And now you just set it up. So you get to move it. So you move it 1 millimeter on your side, and it goes back through the portal because you just finished a move. You see where this is going? In a pretty good diameter around the other end of the spell portal, you deal infinite mortal wounds. This just keeps happening over and over. You stop the combo with the Gravetide on your side, so that, among other things, your opponent can't unsummon it. And hey, look at that. You get the benefit of cover. How nice. So there you go. There's some fun things to do. I'm happy the playtesters were so thorough in finding loopholes and playing through this stuff. Games Workshop, hire me. Okay, I'm good at taking a system and finding ways to exploit it in ways that probably aren't intended, and coming up with rules language to describe rules to stop you from doing them. Hire me. I work distance. I'm in America, but I'm willing to work distance. No big deal. Give me a call. So the Realm artifacts are really cool. Let's talk about them. I'll just talk about the ones that for me stood out originally. A lot of them are pretty good. A lot of them are just bread and butter, like good stuff, The 2 different -3 rend ones are cool. Obviously, Ethereal Amulet is probably the best, just in a vacuum, because it's so strong to ignore rend, because rend is overpowered as a mechanic. And any way that you can ignore it is gravy. And the fact that you can put it on any hero is really good. I imagine we'll see a lot of Ethereal Amulets. I like giving Hydrox-Skin Cloak to a Keeper of Secrets, so that she can, on a 3-up each time, for a D3 mortal wounds, movement phase, fly over a unit, land 3 inches away on the other side, D3. Charge, hop over them again, land 1 inch away, 3-up D3 mortal wounds. Pile in, jump over one model, 3 inches, land on the other side, 3-up D3 mortal wounds. And then spend a command point, pile in and attack twice, pile in again, hop over another model, 3 up, D3 mortal wounds. Great visuals too. I like giving Thermal Rod or Cloak to Thunder Tusk, so that you have a 30-inch threat range now, because you add 4 to the movement characteristic and you can fly. Although the problem with overextending Thunder Tusks is that, yeah, you'll run up and snipe somebody, and then the countercharge will put enough wounds on it that it is useless for the rest of the game. And so you just traded 400 points for 100, so... Although they will be really mad about you using that ability as they win anyway. And they'll let you know that Frost Wreath Ice is bullshit while also beating you easily. What else do I like? Ignax's Scales, of course, for up mortal wound protection is pretty nice. I like all the -1 to hit ones, so that you can give pretty much any Lookout Sir viable hero a mirror shield in essence, which is kind of nice. And one that works halfway in combat. And I like giving Gyropian Gauntlets to somebody who can already pile in 6, so that they can pile in 9, and it's just silly. A lot of these require 6 to hit, and a lot of these do things on 6s to save. And so I tend to just, you know, not even fully read those, since it's so unlikely that that happens, and stacking for it is totally not worth it on like one hero. But here's one that I like. It's in Ulgu, and it's the Sword of Judgment, and Judgment is either spelled wrong, or that's how they spell it in Britain, I'm not sure. Or it's French, you know, sort of, you know, jugement. Pick one of the bearer's melee weapons to be a Sword of Judgment. If the hit roll for an attack with that weapon against a hero or monster is a 6-up, the attack inflicts d6 mortal wounds, and the attack sequence ends, you don't have to roll a wound or save rolls, is the reminder text for it. I like this thing. There are some cool things to do with it, but the thing I like the best, and the thing I'm going to be doing, like, it's this shit's going straight in mixed order for me. Remember my boy, Tenebrial Shard, that I ran at Adepticon? Well, he's coming back. He's coming back, and he is ready to judge some fools for their transgressions, because he will be wielding this thing. Alright, so he's got Bladed Barbs. There's 6 attacks each, so a decent shot at a 6-up. 4s and 4s, no rend, 1 damage. But we're really just looking for a high amount of attacks on one guy, and Tenebrial Shard's pretty good for this. But here's the thing, Shadow Strike. Roll a dice for this model in each of your hero phases. On a 4-up, you remove it from the battlefield and set it up within 3 of any enemy unit on the battlefield. This is really strong. If you do so, you can add 1 to all hit rolls for this model for the rest of the turn. Awesome. What really matters is Sword of Judgment procs on 5s now with your 6 attacks. And so this dude is primed and ready to teleport behind the opponent and nothing personal kid stab them in the brain. With any 5-ups to hit, dealing d6 mortal wounds. Plus all the other stuff he does. He has another Reaper Gauntlets, 2 other attacks, hitting on 2s, winning on 2s, rend 1, damage d3. Sometimes he'll whiff, but 120 points for like a coin flip of killing a really important buff hero anywhere on the table that isn't tightly packed in a bubble wrap so that he can't reach them in any way is okay with me. So I can't wait to play that in Mixed Order. Speaking of Mixed Order, what else can't I wait to play with? Alario. Alario costs 600 points. And she produces 3 Kurnoth Hunters on turn 1. Or a Tree Lord in Duality of Death. You know, whatever. She's an army in a can that you can set it and forget it, and you just don't have to care about babysitting her. She heals herself 2d3 a turn. She heals whatever she summons every turn. She does great damage versus massive regiments because she hits on 3s against them with the damage 5 beetle. She's a triple caster, and spellcasters are important now, so cool. We'll get some of that in there. And none of her abilities, like, require Wildwoods to be good. Like, you know, Durthu in Mixed Order kind of sucks because he only gets a proper amount of attacks with a big sword if he's near Wildwood. And, you know, a lot of the other Sylvaneth units are heavily tied into being able to use Wildwoods, but Alario not the case. She's solid even without it. Now, I know her spell, if it kills somebody, like, summons a Wildwood, and I suppose Wildwoods are free for Mixed Order now because there's no reinforcement points, but it's not like an integral part of what she does. And if I want to summon a Wildwood, I suppose I will. So I'm excited to play her in Mixed Order. I'm excited to play... It's either her or Morathi, really. It depends. Like, I'll play Marathi if they don't fix the glaring oversights of how powerful certain endless spells can be. But if they do, you know, properly balance those, then I'll probably go Alarielle, because it's just a solid, like, it's, you know, the list is like -2 Dragon Lords plus Alarielle and keep 80 points. Also in mixed order, I was already playing a Rune Lord and 30 Longbeards. And, I got 10 points for free, so solid. Oh, Beastclaw got some point drops, so people have been wondering if they'll be good now. I have an extra, like, it depends on my list, but on average I found I have an extra about 120 points to spend. Everybody still hits on 4s, our allies still suck, we have bad command abilities, we don't have magic, we don't have synergies, we don't have bodies, and we don't have good allegiance abilities. Stone Skeleton still sucks. And Thunder Tusk is still an expensive one-trick pony that gets charged on turn 1 into uselessness. So now we still suck real bad, but now we can play 4 Frost Lords in the same list, which will lose to just about everybody, but you'll at least have some fun while losing. And I suppose you gotta, you know, you gotta take your silver linings where you can find them. Dreadwood War Grove. This is the new hotness. This thing requires an Outcasts battalion, which you have to take 4 units of Spite Revenants for 70 each. It used to be 80. And it's got Malicious Tormentors. You can reroll wound rolls of 1 for attacks made by the Spite Revenants. Cool. But the important thing is Subterfuge. Roll a dice at the start of the first battle round. On a 1 or 2, you can use one of the following strategies. On a 3 or 4, you can use 2 of them. And on a 5 or 6, you can use all 3. And this isn't one of those, like, you're hoping for a high roll, otherwise it's useless. It's like, one of these is amazing. Ambush, a Dreadwood unit can be redeployed anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 6 inches from an enemy unit. I'm not going to talk about the rest of them, because this is the one. But the other ones are good too. The maximum range of enemy attacks, abilities, and spells against Dreadwood units is limited to 12 inches during the first battle round. This is huge if you're playing against any sort of Alpha Strike that isn't pure melee. This thing is awesome. And Sneak Attack is sweet because 3 Dreadwood units can immediately move as if we're the movement phase. So you get to start running towards the point that you couldn't put a Wildwood under right at the beginning of the game or something. But man, Ambush is where it's at. So immediately thinking about this Ambush ability, like, I made a meme about it, because I think there's 4 levels to it. You're like, I could ambush Dirthu. Like, that's really good. You know, I can put him 6 inches away from the enemy, and then I can charge and just, you know, stab somebody in the brain with that 6 damage sword. Like, that's good. Or I could ambush Drycha and put her 6 inches away, and then blast people off the table with her Squirmling stuff. And that's real strong. I mean, she's kind of a sitting duck after you do that, and you're going for the double probably, but, like, that's strong. And level 3, ambush Alarielle, and then summon something. And now all those guys get to charge. And she's casting the rest of her spells as well. So that's really strong. And then level 4 is ambush a Branch Wraith with an Acorn. Use the Acorn to set up 3 Wildwood chains 1 inches from the opponent's front line, and then Spirit Walk your whole army 9 inches away, and then roll charges for your entire army against theirs. That seems pretty fun. It's so strong. Suddenly Sylvaneth became a automatic turn 1 Alpha Strike army if it wants to be. They gained that option. It became runnable.
And with the point cost reductions, they basically told you this is the one you're going to take.
Yeah.
It went from 200 points to 90.
Right. And all the Spite Revenants went down 10. So I played this list because you have to, because you're able to. They've allowed us to play with 4 Frost Lords. I'm doing it. I played against his Khorne, Bloodmarked Khorne, led by Archaon. So kind of a casual list, like more for funsies than competition, but still with enough bite to be viable, is how I would describe it. And it was hilarious. He won hugely. It was almost close, and then he got to 8 Blood Tithe on turn 3, and summoned a Bloodthirster 9 inches away from an objective, and just charged him in and killed the 2 cats that were guarding it, you know? and then won the game. So Khorne summoning is real, that's for sure, especially in a Bloodmarked Warband. I specifically killed none of his heroes for the first 3 turns of the game, and instead tried to kill all the Reavers on the table, so that he couldn't do shenanigans and create sort of a Blood Tithe engine with them. Him taking 2 turns in a row was so brutal. It lost me the game immediately. Basically what it did was it allowed him to hero phase finish off the Frost Lord that was sticking his guys in combat, so that by the time it came to move, he could jump over everybody with Archaon and then charge a Frost Lord out of position and stab him in the brain with the Slayer of Kings and kill him from full life automatically. So that was it. So 460 points gone. But that's what Archaon does. It's scary. Frost Lords on Stonehorn, especially with an artifact, now that we have access to decent artifacts with the realms, like, a Frost Lord on Stonehorn with an artifact is actually good. But the weakness for them, I guess, is slain outright abilities, which he had, and used to great effect. Something else I learned during the course of that game, I was doing damage to Archaon pretty easily. Like, I'm used to Archaon being one of those 2-up or rolling 1s kind of guy for saving throws. But since Mystic Shield is poop now, I was just doing damage to him. And so all it took was one and a half decent rounds of combat, and the second Frost Lord just killed him. And so,
oh damn,
like, already, like, Mystic Shield was so much bigger of a problem than anyone realized when they were playing it, because that was just the rules of the world. Was, you know, oh yeah, you can just take Mystic Shield +1 to save. It seems like a little thing, just +1 to save, but, you know, it was so much more important and more powerful than people gave it credit for. And the nerf was very justified. And more things will be killable at all, or even worth attacking now, and that's a good thing. Like, honestly, for people's enjoyment, actually, like, the more grindy, unkillable masses of stuff in the game, the less fun everyone has worldwide. Like the Plague-Touched Warband, Nurgle, or, you know, how Fireslayers was for the past year, where you run up and you just don't do damage, and then it's 5 turns later and you lose and, like, nothing happened. It's just you lost and you didn't do anything. Like, that's, you know, the average person pretty much hates that, and so I think the average person will be pleased with the new Mystic Shield, even though they're kind of sad that they don't get to use it.
But they've hyped Endless Spells so much.
Dude, Endless Spells are awesome. It's just, half of them are a little too balanced, and just about as likely to hurt you as help you. And if you're paying points for something, and it has a decent chance of hurting you, fuck off. Just straight up. So that's the balanced half of them, like the swords, you know, 20 points, mortal, like 1 or 2 mortal wounds, like, that's great, you know. 40 points for a pendulum or something. Like, these things are cool. Hyper competitive, they're probably not something I'd use, but they're not a bad choice, even for, like, trying to be viable or competitive or whatever. And then there's the other half of them that are just pants on head broken, like the Spell Portal. I don't know what they're... they have cool... except for the chain ones, I suppose. Like, their models look awesome. Their effects are kind of cool. They will be fun to play with, I think. That's where the Endless Spells are really going to be viable, I think, competitively, is people with increased casting range can use the fair ones in a way that is, like, safe enough and good enough to be worth it. And armies with oppressive magic can exploit the interactions between the broken ones and really cause their opponent to have no fun whatsoever. Also, point of contention. The sweet, huge, flaming jaws, you know? The things that are the size of a fucking Stonehorn. It does a D3 mortal wounds, and that's it. Why? It's the biggest one, and it does the least damage. That's stupid. I'm mad. Because it's, like, supposed to be the destruction one. And so I get it. They had to make the destruction one worse, because that's the tax, but you didn't have to make it that obvious, you know? It could have been a D6, and it would have been it would have been a cool thing that people would have played with, maybe. Predictions for GHB Rules of 1. Each command ability can only be used once per model. Per turn. That's my assumption. This solves a lot of problems. There's no way they couldn't have seen this, you know? Like, what if I just use the Glotkin's ability like 5 times, you know? And now all my Puscoil Blightlords have like 11 attacks. Like, surely they thought of that 1 second after reading the rule, you know? And so came up with this rule of 1.
Right.
As for prayer rules of 1, I'm not sure. It's probably going to be similar to the Daughters of Khaine version, where some of them you can, some of them you can't, and then they just kind of go through all of them and see if it's okay. And they decide if you should be able to use it more than once or not. And some are, and some probably aren't, depending. I'm sure Bronzed Flesh is changing to reroll ones to save if Mystic Shield was. Otherwise it would be better than old Mystic Shield, and like I don't think they would give priestly armies that huge of a buff. Well, not a buff, but just after the dust settles, they'd have a huge leg up. It would turn Khorne into like a defensive army, and that's stupid. Yeah, like he specifically mentioned ones that I'm like, oh yeah, that's in the notes already. No question. Because I guess it just comes from, I suppose, being a competitive Magic player. You just think about things in a different way. You immediately start unpackaging stuff and trying to figure out how you can get around limitations and how you can exploit mechanics and stuff. And it's fun, you know, as a thought exercise. Not to like subject an opponent to having to sit through, but to think about as a thought experiment. It's different. In the core rules, triumphs. If your army won a major victory in its previous battle, roll a dice when you pick your general and look up the result on the table below. And this is how you get a triumph in non-match play. And so he's like, do you think this is how triumphs are going to be moving forward? And I'm like, no way. Because then at a tournament, you would have your friend come along, and in between every round, you would ask your friend to play you in a game of Age of Sigmar, and he would immediately concede before he started setting up models, so that you technically won a major victory. So that you can claim a triumph in between every round. So that you always had a triumph every round. And he's like, your brain works strangely. By the way, all those Marathi bow shots, I calculated it out, and the average is between 81 and 97 damage after saves.
Oh my god.
Against a 4-up.
Oh my god.
And the cool thing is, since you're using the command ability every round of shooting, you're not really missing out on any split attacks, because you're deciding each time. And so once one unit is dead, you just move on to the next one and start targeting them with all of them. Oh yeah, the coherency rule, where at the end of any turn, if you're out of coherency, you lose guys until you're back in. Side note, the new coherency rule is one of the reasons why banishment is such a bullshit spell. I mean, it is already. Even if you use it properly. It's so unfun, where you can take an enemy unit and remove them from the table, and then you set them up wherever you want. So, you know, the far board edge, and they're basically out of the game for at least 2 turns. And that's incredibly annoying and so powerful. And that's just using it properly. With the new coherency rule, you don't often get to pick up your opponent's models and then set them up. So you just set them up out of coherency, and then all of them die except one. That's clearly not intended. It's a good way to get a 0 sportsmanship score, but it's currently allowed by the rules, and it definitely needs to be fixed. Speaking of bullshit. I had this cool tactic I was going to use with my Arcanaut company in Mixed Order, but Vince and Tom spoiled it on their show, and I was sad. Where you make a T, and then they have to charge the closest guy, and you just choose casualties to get yourself out of coherency so that you can, end of turn, kill off the ones in combat and then be safe. And when it rolls around to your turn, you're farther away than 3 with the rest of your guys, and now they can shoot wherever.
Oh man.
And, I mean, it costs you, right? Because you're losing guys. But there's a reason I didn't paint the Lord a different color in my Arcanaut company. Because he is no different than any of the rest of them. As far as I'm concerned, that squad is 9 skyhooks and 21 ablative wounds that I will throw under the bus as fast as I can to make sure that the rest of them can keep shooting. So if I lose an extra 4 guys to this so that it rolls around to my turn and I can shoot unmolested and target anything I want, fair trade. So rumor has it, we're getting some tweaked and updated rules for Allegiance abilities, War Scrolls, you know, for all the factions. This rumor is probably false, but it is the last desperate grip of hope that us Beastclaw players and a bunch of other armies have